the offensive MVP of this team so far. And for this discussion only, we're going to take JT Barrett out of the equation because I think if we left him in, it would be too easy to say that the guy running the offense and developing each week is the guy. Without JT Barrett, talking about the running backs, the receivers, maybe the offensive linemen, who's your offensive MVP, Bill?
My offensive MVP is receiver Michael Thomas, tied for first on the team with in touchdowns with 5. He's tied with Devin Smith. But the reason I like Thomas is because he seems to be JT's go-to receiver. JT hasn't been in a position too much this year where he needs to be bailed out or he needs one of his receivers to make a play. But it seems like when he has been, in the rare occasions he has been in that situation, Michael Thomas is the guy that he's gone to. Thomas, for me, out of all the receivers, has shown the best ability to make plays and turn short gains into something bigger. And we saw the touchdown catch he had against Maryland was one of the best plays Ohio State's had all year. To go up over a guy, get both feet down in the end zone, that was a great play. And I think Michael Thomas has been maybe the most consistent player on the offense outside of JT Barrett.
17 catches leads the team, 322 receiving yards leads the team, 5 touchdown catches tied with Devin Smith for the team lead. Who's your offensive MVP?
My offensive MVP is Ezekiel Elliott. You see how I pronounce his name right, Bill?
I did.
Ezekiel Elliott.
79 carries, 472 yards, 5.8 yards per carry, 92.4 yards per game for Elliott.
I think he just played a lot better than I thought he would, and he's done things. I mean, he's been able to control a game or two by being a power runner, and we didn't even think he had that in his arsenal. So, Michael Thomas has had big games, and he's, scored 5 touchdowns this year, but he's also had games where he's caught 2 or 3 passes and hasn't been much of a factor. I think Ezekiel Elliott has been in the middle of Ohio State's game plan and has consistently performed the way he's performed all year. And, I don't think he's been flashy. He's not Carlos Hyde, and that comparison is starting to get old because nobody really is, and he's a different type of player. But I think for being a sophomore who's really seeing his first extended responsibility, he's playing almost like a veteran. And, since JT Barrett's out of the equation and no receiver is really lighting the fire, I think I would agree with you in the sense that Michael Thomas would be my pick if I had to be a receiver. But right now, the most consistent player, I think, on the offense right now has to be Ezekiel Elliott.
But as you wrote this weekend, Michael Thomas is related to Keyshawn. You talked to Keyshawn about Michael Thomas. Does Keyshawn weigh into this decision at all? That things towards Michael Thomas? Keyshawn was very nice to talk to, right?
He was a very nice guy. Very nice.
You're still sticking with Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah. We don't do personal favors.
I am going to go a little bit off the reservation. And in terms of MVP, in terms of being valuable, I'm going to say it's Darryl Baldwin, the right tackle. And the reason I'm going to say that is because I thought the right tackle spot had a chance to be the biggest problem on this Ohio State offense. Because if you're blocking, if you have 4 guys blocking, but you have a tackle getting beat every play, you can blow up your whole offense. Taylor Decker moving to the left side this year from the right side, that was the spot where you didn't know exactly who was going to win that job. And for Darryl Baldwin as a senior, Bill, you wrote about him. He's a great story. He's a great guy to talk to, has a very good family. And the coaches say great things about him in terms of working hard, being humble, but he's playing pretty well. You could be a great guy, but if you're getting beat 6 times a game, you're getting beat 6 times a game. You thought maybe he struggled a little bit early, but if he was not playing well, we'd see JT Barrett running for his life, and he's a little bit less equipped than Braxton Miller to run for his life. That really hasn't been the case all that often this year. So to lock down a spot that could be a problem, I don't know if Darryl Baldwin's an all Big Ten player, that kind of thing, but we haven't really talked about him because it hasn't been an issue.
Yeah, I thought against Navy, he had maybe some first game jitters, that being the first start of his career, but since then, he's been very good, frankly, and we've talked a lot about the offensive line. We've talked about Billy Price and Jacoby Bourne and Pat Elflein. We haven't talked much about Taylor Decker or Darryl Baldwin, and that's a good thing when you're talking about offensive linemen, because if you're not talking about them, that means they're doing their job well.
Quick thing about offensive linemen, got a comment. I don't even know if it's a question, but just read it on because you joined us, and we appreciate you. I believe that an A has to go to Billy Price. Young player on the offensive line, you see him opening holes, and you never really hear his name except for when he played out of position with a few disastrous snaps at center. O-line is not a glamour position like it is at linebacker with McMillan. With so many seniors gone, having a true freshman or a freshman excelling on the offensive line will pay off for years.
There were a lot of questions about who's going to win jobs. Billy Price came from off the radar a little bit. They talked that he was a strong guy and all this, but that he won a job when maybe he wasn't initially in that mix. So to win it, and again, I think he does deserve some credit for that.
Yeah, I think the offensive line as a whole kind of deserves credit for how they've come along, particularly since Virginia Tech. Still mixing and matching a bit, but haven't really lost much in the last 3 games, and that's a good sign when you're switching guys in and out.
So Darryl Baldwin, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Thomas, our non-JT Barrett offense.